Hi guys, it's Lauren, the founder of PubEd, which I'm trying to really define as we go. And any venture I've ever set up has initially been one thing, and then just like a lot of things, it evolves over time and differentiates itself amongst the team of people that eventually come together to be involved with it. And with the freedom to be creative in work, and educational work in my ed tech company, it allows for expansion of the company and that evolution to occur in a way that is kept in line with the interests and talents of our team. So it's kind of this organic, I don't want to call it a conglomerate because it's not. It's basically an educational technology corporation called Geekster that founded PubEd through me. But it's not just about who founded it, it's about what it can do. So the goals of PubEd is to get together a group of people that are like-minded but also neurodivergent, so we could get different perspectives on different cultural backgrounds on the state of education. We can look to other countries and their educational systems, but this is really about the students in the United States. This is really about what's going on here, home side, stateside, in our countries. And I say stateside because right now looking at the states is highly relevant in terms of looking at what we do with so many facets of education: funding, curriculum, mandates like regents. You don't see that going on in every state. And just briefly, the reason for that is because we have the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that kind of delegated the power to the states in order to make educational decisions. Now, there's pros and there's cons to that. I feel like some of the cons that I want to look at in that antiquated system of things is that you get disparities, and I'm not talking about demographics, cultural, but just generally speaking, there are disparities from one state to the next in how funding is appropriated. And of course, there is federal funding for education. And then there's state funding. And we see that here, let's say in New York State. We see that with college students where they are going to apply to school, and a lot of students will fill out their FAFSA. That's your financial aid application. You fill out that information, and then thereafter, that's your federal application for aid or scholarships or loans or what have you. You find out what you can qualify for in terms of a 2 or 4 year degree. And then thereafter, when that is processed, you transfer your information or enter your information over onto the TAPS form, and that is your state aid. So you have different state aids coming in with different packages now. And I mean, really, if you want to take the lens in or out on that stuff, it doesn't matter because it is complicated and there is a lot. There's a lot that goes on. You have to break things down in education. You have early ed, which is a universe unto itself. You have higher education, a universe unto itself. Each of these elements of education having their own specific pros, cons, and challenges that all sort of need to be dealt with on their own level. And there's only so much two hands could do. So that's why, the power of teamwork is very, very important. I thought bringing minds together in a sort of, you've heard of PubMed. So in a sort of PubEd, a group of scholars, educators, people who have, even parents who have opinions about education and ideas that are worth listening to, worth considering, worth being active about. So I think eventually all roads should lead to some form of activism. But again, there's only so much we could do with two hands. I think that just like anything else I've built, this will grow and evolve into something that is a force to be reckoned with, hopefully. And some people, they look at a startup, they look at a company, they look at their numbers. A lot of startups are growing very, very fast. And, my company is so much more than that. I'm not out for profit per se. Of course, there is a lot of things that my company does that are profitable. And, it's a very competitive, very expansive industry. Educational technology. We're going to see things in the next decade that just further technology beyond our wildest dreams. Think back when there was, corded phones till now. We're going to see that sort of evolution happen in education. One of the things that can do for us then is to put into perspective the ability to really reach and teach to individual students. And I'm not just talking one-on-one. I'm talking about the use of technology to facilitate innovative, dynamic, artificially intelligence-powered ways to assess students' mastery, proficiency, skills, to sort of get to know students. I'm not talking about replacing a teacher with a robotic computer. I'm talking about robots, computers assisting teachers. And I don't mean in the physical. I'm not talking about, we don't need to create a walking, talking assistant teacher that's robotic. I'm talking about a teacher giving out iPads to all her students, and that specific iPad is equipped with tools, technologies, and programs, applications, platforms that pass certain security levels that are necessary for children to be interacting on them. We get parental permissions, and then we let students have access to that, and we train teachers how to work with that. And that becomes the teacher's extra set of eyes and ears and insights. And we have systems, we have algorithms, we have machines that can preempt with a good degree of accuracy many of the ways that students could be advanced in a system like that. So they take a quiz, and I like this from the top up approach versus the top down, but I see it both ways. But let's just say students go into a classroom, they take a quiz, and that quiz is just for one chapter. But what about if they go into the classroom, they get on their iPad, they log into one of our programs, and they take a test broken down over the course of a few days, just starting out the academic year, not waiting to see how students do. Let's start them out. We're going to take a test, and that test is going to include all of the information that you will see and learn throughout the year. Now, why wouldn't we do that? But we don't. Do you know why we wouldn't? Because I don't. The fact is if you have students sit in front of you at the beginning of the year and you give them, let's say, a final exam then and there, that's going to clearly put into perspective their strengths and their weaknesses without waiting to figure it out, which means now you open yourself up to an entire year of preparation that you can use that program on the app now to gear in to the individual learner and help cue them into practices, suggested practices, homeworks, and a whole set of curriculum from highly digitized and pre-established digital libraries. Think about Alexa or Siri. They sort of have access to digital libraries, right? Like you can ask them a lot of questions. They'll give you answers, right? You can't ask them, though. You can't say, what's the answer to the universe, though, But there are limits, so obviously. But there are even limits on that technology when it comes to students. Those limits are almost erroneous because students can take it so far that you don't need to go to the limits of what you can do. You can use these simple tools and strategies that already exist, these technologies, these applications, to just take them along their educational journey, to challenge them a bit, but to make sure that they are within the boundaries, let's say on an annual basis, of understanding what they need. And that starts with the test first, not the test after. You'll have students, you'll find out if you do this in your classroom, okay? Teachers, you can do this on your own. If you want to sign up for a pilot, try this out on your own in your classroom and fill out some data for us, that would be amazing. We would love that. So I'll give contact information at the end, but you give the test at the beginning of the year. Let's say it's a regions-based course. Maybe you'd like to base the exam off of that because, of course, we do have certain guidelines state by state that need to be followed in terms of the curriculum. And while teachers don't always get as much of a individual say in what they have to teach, teachers may have something that they don't think is appropriate to teach, but they still have to teach it. So that being said, let's just consider giving students a test, the final exam, at the beginning of the year. Because when I do this with my students, what I found is that sometimes they know up to half the material already. Up to half the material. So let's say you find a subset of students, maybe 5 or 10 students that seem to know half the material that's on that final exam already. What you do is you double check that half. You make sure maybe you triple check that half. You give them questions like that half again and again, maybe 2, 3, if you want to be super efficient, 4 times, little assessments. Do they really have the mastery on that 50%? And if you find that's true, then you have an entire year to spend working on the other 50% with that subset of students, with that group. What you could do is you can go on your platforms that my company designs, and you can go and say, okay, well, here's the homework for those 10 tonight, or this week, rather. You're not going to assign homework on the same day, but you get what I'm saying, right? So you go on there and you are able to right away now start reaching to the students again. Why don't we start with a final exam as our beginning exam? We need to have beginning exams, not exit tickets, not to make sure they understood what they understood for the day. Do that later. Do that later when you find out you only have to work into 50% of the material for the year with some of your students. Some of your students, you'll find that they don't know, maybe they know 20%. Then, of course, you're going to give them, you're going to go onto your app, you're going to go onto the platform or anything we design for you, for your students, for your school, for your classroom, and you're going to say, okay, well, you know what? They need to work on a little bit more. So your whole plan, your whole approach for that subset of students, just in how you work with them through the educational technologies, are going to be so much more efficient. And what I believe you'll find if you employ these methods is that sooner or later, if not right away, you should start to notice that you don't have some students rushing to keep up with other students. You don't have some students getting lost because you're teaching to the 50 and you're forgetting the 20. Really cool helicopter above. Okay, so back to what I was saying. Let me digress. So I think you guys get where I'm coming from now at this point. And, I would really love to hear from educators. I would really love to hear your questions, your perspectives. I want you to challenge my thinking, my ideas on this matter, and just come at me with it. Let me have the chance to get back to you, to think about what your questions are, and see if there's things that I can tell you about technologies that exist out there, or technologies my company has created or is working on that will help you in your classroom with your students. There's a lot on teachers' plates. There's that too. There's the taxing demand of how much time teachers are spending just to do what a teacher has to do nowadays. I know a lot of teachers. I have a lot of teacher friends, a lot of educator friends, and they are overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed. And if you look at the statistics, look at Pew Research Center statistics, look at the data. How many teachers are leaving education? Do we really want that? What does that open us up to? I mean, you have veteran teachers. You have teachers that have been teaching for some number of years. It's kind of like, I don't want to say out with the old and in with the new, for lack of a better idiom. That's what I'm going to say. But that's basically what we have. We have that problem going on. And I do believe, and I have no sort of age discrimination. Like, I love the youth. I feel like they are so amped up. They are so in tune with technologies. But we've kind of passed that gap too, where we have a lot of people that have retired. There's really no reason for teachers to have a lack of technological proficiency as far as I'm concerned in the schools. I do think that if teachers have those difficulties, there really needs to be something more universal, some more tools universally accepted so that training could be given. But I will say to those teachers too, there's always like in-house guidance, instructions, help, question and answers that you can go through in order to learn how to use a tool. And it's just like anything else. It's just like riding a bike, you get on and then you don't think you can do it and then you learn. I always say it's like walking around your college campus for the first time. It seems huge, but by the second day, maybe the first day, maybe right away, you figure it out. You use your maps, you use your instructions, and you figure it out, and it's like second nature. And if teachers can take themselves there and bridge the gaps between technology and usage, just becoming comfortable enough to rely on certain technologies as assistive in classrooms, not just with students with disabilities, but as a benefit to all students. then we're going to see something happen in this country. We're going to see changes.